Now, this is where all the reactions are coming through now after the Dormaahene Osajifo Osiadeyo Ajimambedu II, who is also put on record, a High Court judge appealed to the Attorney General and by extension the President to discontinue or file a nolle prosequi of the case involving Gyakye Quayson and the criminal charges that he is facing. Indeed, after this statement, there's been some reactions to it, but for the uninitiated, let's take a listen to the Dormaahene and the specific statement that he made concerning Gyakye Quayson's case. Take a look.
Number and the Attorney General of Ghana. Emrama Kwame say, Adiabi Ekoso na Oshe Ghana for any Jenima Otimia Uchaso. Nano asenof. Baye se papa no betwa na konyanum so onya MPB onu. Bankoto foforo. Batoma na na se bantu amano. Bantu amano. Anya overwhelming majority no nyae. 57.56 oya bibi ketwa wa batum. As a matter of urgency, I'm appealing to the President of the Attorney General. President of the Republic, if he has any role to play, that trial should be aborted. The Attorney General should, as a matter of urgency, file a nolle prosequi to end that particular decision. Sir, make a way because but was what? Ma ye did the Ghana for attempt. Ye did the Asemnof for attempt. No cranny, Samre engineer, Minhu Sabi. Mfaswo bia e de be Ghana said damfo no ye be kwa prosecute no na sa odi ne gina court a na batu amani MP adwuma no obere na kwa ankoyo amaya nsha mra papa amasa bi Ghana for enye adwuma amampuntu akwa na obetima blame no it's on this day na me catch say Samre you were president you know I love you. This matter cannot go on. Attorney General. Odame, prayer de share, bono de share, shawumum, Coco Chasem, Yifio, Nian Koyanim as Ghana for.
So that's it right there, and that's the part that pertains to Gyakye Quayson case. That's the Dormaahene Osajifo Osiadeyo Ajimambedu II. Now, after this, a number of reactions to it. The Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, in fact, the Majority Leader in Parliament, Gyakye Quayson, got a few thoughts to share on this as well. Take a look. This is what he said, and shortly I'll be joined by Professor Gyakye Quayson on this. He says that Dormaahene is a respected chief and a distinguished judge. As such, his comments are not ordinary. But I must say that he says he disagrees with him on the call to drop Gyakye Quayson's case. Gyakye Quayson goes on to say that we're talking about constitutional matters here. Is it the case of the chief that he would call for same to be discontinued if it was a case of murder? It goes on and on, and it says as an appeals court judge, in fact, what we learned is a high court judge, rather. He is a potential candidate to the Supreme Court. Comments like this might haunt and affect the chance when posed to him at the vetting. Says he disagrees with him, essentially giving details of why he disagrees with the Dormaahene on this matter. But really, did the Dormaahene go outside of the remit of the law in expressing his opinion about this matter, and then also taking into consideration the fact that he is a High Court judge himself? Let's go on to Zoom now. And Professor Gyakye Quayson is a law lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School, connecting with us. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on Ghana Tonight. But let's first of all start off with the basis of some clarity here. The power to file a nolle prosequi, can the Attorney General exercise this power in every circumstance, or there are certain exceptions to the rule?
Well, the Attorney General is given the power under the Constitution to prosecute cases solely under his mandate, under Article 88. Of course, he can delegate that powers. And the rules also allow him under the Criminal Procedure Act to call of a case, and that is what is meant by nolle prosequi. So it simply is a Latin term meaning that no more interested in pursuing or prosecuting.
So it is indeed the case that in the specific case of James Gyakye Quayson, and if you listen to the Dormaahene, he contextualizes his call in the specific realm of the sentiments of the Ghanaian people and the fact that if you look at the impact of this, if there has to be another ruling on this matter, there's a by-election goes back and forth, he would not be able to serve his people well. The Attorney General can exercise that authority to file a nolle prosequi in this case if he so wish, correct?
It is in the sole discretion of the Attorney General to determine whether to issue a nolle prosequi. And when that decision is taken, he's not supposed to even give a reason for why he's discontinuing the case. Of course, but there have been the argument in a case or two that it has to be subject to the rule of exercise of discretionary powers, but it's solely within his mandate to do that. And looking at the advice or point made that he should discontinue the case or apply for nolle prosequi, it is entirely up to him to make that decision. He cannot be compelled to do that.
In fact, if you listen to the Dormaahene's tape, I played almost a full portion of that statement that he made. That appeal kept going back to the point about how this impacts on the people of Asin North. When you listen to him, he makes the point about this by-election and the fact that even regardless of everything that's going on, James Gyakye Quayson won with a landslide victory. And that is an affirmation of the Asin North people's faith and support for him. That's the context that the Dormaahene makes this appeal to the Attorney General and the President. Can that be considered in any way?
In my opinion, yes. In my opinion, yes, because there seems to be the general sentiment that the case, the Attorney General is not being fair or is not properly positioned as an independent, neutral person, as the Attorney General of the Republic in taking up the case. For example, if you look at the comments made by the Deputy Attorney General in court, that it was irresponsible on the part of James Gyakye Quayson to contest the position, since it's likely that he may face the prisons. So certainly it has been colored politically, and probably that is where the Dormaahene, who also doubles as a High Court judge, is coming from, and saying that. And also, for example, if you look at the fact that the case was to be tried on a daily basis, I don't even know if that position has been varied yet, which was to sort of put impediments in his way in prosecuting, in going to court. So in all of this, that challenge, that issue has arisen about the fact that the case seems to have been politically affected in that regard. And so, in my opinion, for that matter, if the people have voted largely by a landslide to say that this is a person we want, and they're also looking at the fact that the issue of prosecution there's not a case of a harm being caused to anybody here. And the fact that even the Electoral Commission cleared him, and later on there was this issue about the fact that he lied to the people, and therefore that's why the case has been brought against him. It raises questions where there doesn't seem to be fairness being applied to James Gyakye Quayson. And for that matter, I think that it would have been, or it would be in the best interest of justice and for the people of Asin North to be given the opportunity to have somebody to represent them. Already considering the fact that there was also some concern raised about the fact that if his name is expunged from the records and he's prevented from serving the people, it would cause a gap in the ability of the people to have representation in parliament. And that went on for a couple of months. And so if this case is continued and he is also is sent to prison, if he's convicted, then it's going to create a further gap. But meanwhile, this problem, there's a way to resolve it. And so in that sense, the advice or comment made by the Dormaahene seems fair, that it can be made. It's a comment that I think will be considered as fair comment.
Right. Professor Chair, you said this comment by the Dormaahene is a fair comment, which can be made, but this is the response of the Attorney General to the comment by the Dormaahene. Take a look.
Justice. I'm not going to comment on it right now. I'll come up with a proper statement on the matter, and it will be in respect of all comments generally which have the tendency to subvert the administration of justice. I think that is very unhealthy for our democratic dispensation, and therefore we must not countenance it.
Lawyers of Gyakye Quayson have filed an appeal against the ruling of an Accra High Court.
That's the Attorney General's verdict on this. Professor Chair, you describe the Dormaahene statement as a fair comment, which he can make, bearing in mind that he's a High Court judge. The Attorney General says that this is an unhealthy comment. Now, you are a law professor. Looking at the remits of the law, does this statement impact on the case in any way, shape, or form?
Well, if it is an advice, well, I think that, you see, one problem with the statement is the fact that it is coming from a High Court judge. And secondly, the forum in which it was made, where it was an NDC forum. And so the argument that, for example, whether he's not acting politically, that issue can also be raised. And if it is a judge also, there is there's no clear violation of any of the ethics of the bench. Because if you look at the procedures outlined in the disciplinary committee of the Judicial Council, there is no clear violation of what the High Court judge said, who is also the Dormaahene. So it is difficult to pinpoint him to any particular fault. But I think it's about the circumstances under which the statement and where the statement was made. If it is an advice, there's nothing wrong with that. It is up to the Attorney General to take it or leave it. Probably some would have suggested that it have been made in private. But we also know the Dormaahene's position, or generally his posture on certain issues in the country. He speaks where he thinks the truth should be, or where his mind directs him to make any comment, which doesn't seem to portray him as siding with any particular political party. He has sung the praise of Nana Akufo-Addo in certain instances, and where he's also not going, feels that he's not going right, he has commented on it. He has commented on the gay rights issues and so on. So I think that probably that is the context in which we should see his comments and not see it as something that is negative. And it is up to the Attorney General to decide to accept it or not to take it. But I think having been made in public, it's very unlikely the Attorney General is going to accept it.
Prof, I thank you. So takeaways, indeed, it's the venue that you put this to, but essentially your general analysis of this is that there's no clear violation of the law by this statement that the Dormaahene has made, and it is a fair comment, and taking into consideration what the Attorney General's response is as well. But thank you so much for your time here on Ghana Tonight. That's the law professor, Professor Gyakye Quayson. He's a professor of law at the University of Ghana Law School, and then also a human rights lawyer, sharing his thoughts with us on this particular statement by the Dormaahene and then also the reactions by the Attorney General and whether there has been any violation of the legal principles by this statement